Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo.
Oh my God!
If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow. Whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Hey, everybody. Well, another episode of the Plotaholics podcast, the only podcast that asks, how old is Ramona Flowers? I'm Shane Wilson, and I'm joined as always by Brian Tan. Hello, Brian. How are you?
Heyo, how's it going, everybody? Man, I'll tell you what. This movie, and I'm going to come right out and say it, is in my top of all time.
It's so good.
It is so good. And you know what? This is the best film that was a box office bomb, and there's no reason that it should have been. This is definitely the audience not knowing how good it was.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's one of those that has had a richer post-box office life.
Absolutely.
Than it did initial release, right? Like it's one of those like cult classic sort of movies, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's almost kind of a throwback in that regard because there were a lot of films in the 70s and 80s and in the 90s that didn't do well at the box office, but they got their real love in video rental and on cable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, resurrected them. And this film is absolutely that. And
it is sort of one of, I would say, first of the streaming generation.
Yes.
To like sort of find that kind of acclaim in its post-box office life.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, to call this film a romantic action comedy is an understatement because this is a comic book film. It's a video game film. It is everything, everywhere, all at once type of film.
It is actually, I was thinking a lot about everything, everywhere, all at once while I was watching this because it is like similarly a fever dream, right?
It absolutely is.
It's more, its narrative is obviously much more linear.
Yes.
And easier, I think, in many ways to follow, but it is a fever dream.
It is, but it's also
it is the kind of movie that begs the question: what is real? Like,
absolutely,
what am I watching? You know what I mean?
And is this really what happens in Toronto?
Right.
I gotta ask our friend Al from the produce stand, him and Squirrely Matt and everyone in that whole crew. Does this actually happen in Toronto?
Everyone, everywhere in Canada.
Yes, like is everyone just sort of like going in these random like 2D
Are they all made out of loonies?
Yeah, is everyone in Canada an actual Looney Tune, eh?
Well, no, the loonie is the Canadian currency. Are they all made out of those coins, right?
Oh, gotcha. Well, that too.
Speaking there, loonies may not be coins. I think they are though. They may not. I don't think they're paper currency.
Oh, okay. So what do they call their paper currency?
Let's see.
Okay. We call ours just money, dollar bill, yo.
They're dollars, right? So a loonie is a Canadian $1 coin.
Oh,
yes.
Lune, it's French,
right?
Now it's
Canadian
funny
currency. It was funny.
Well, what's also great is that I'm trying
it's just the Canadian dollar.
Oh, it's the Canadian dollar, period. So are they all made out of loonies?
Well, it would take 100 loonies to make 100 Canadian dollar bill.
Okay. Huh. So does that mean that if I drop kicked a Canadian kid, it would just be like 100 loonies falling out?
Well, that's the thing. Is are
How
these?
does it
That's
work?
why I'm asking. Are they loonies? Are the people made up of? We were talking about this before we hit go. Are the people in this movie made up of currency, or are they made up of like uh arbitrary video game coinage?
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, man, this movie is just well. For one thing that I was thinking because I started rewatching this. I was trying to watch this on Sunday, well, late Saturday, early Sunday, and I fell asleep just because I was exhausted. And I finally got the time to watch it today when I got back from work. And I'm taking Odette for the walk because it's finally like a nice enough day. And I'm like, this film is a fever dream because there is no way in hell that this guy has 3 to 4 hot women fighting over him. Like, there's no way Michael Cera, nice guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I mean, come on. Like, that's the fever dream for me because.
So, okay, let's talk about it because Ramona Flowers is totally in his wheelhouse. She is attainable for him.
I don't know, man. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is.
They're both. We're not talking about her. We're talking.
All right, we're talking about
Ramona Flowers.
Okay.
Right. And in this film, like Ramona Flowers is that quirky sort of like indie chick. He's in a band. He's understated. Like he's sort of like they're both in the pocket for each other. Now, Knives is only into him because he's a rock star and he's older than her.
Right.
Like, in a world where all things are equal, Knives would not be into him.
No, she even says at the end, "I'm too cool for you," and she is. Knives is entirely too cool for him.
Yeah, and if she were a little older, then she wouldn't be that like swoony like fangirl. You know what I mean?
Right. If she were like 19 instead of 17,
yeah.
Oh, she would be like, "Okay, you're in a band. That's cool. Whatever."
Yeah, exactly. A band that is like kind of good, but like
I'm a fan of Sex Bob-omb, but I love punk rock. Period. Six Bob-omb.
Yeah.
Sex Bob-omb.
I like their music. I love Garbage Truck.
Yeah,
I think that's a great song.
Absolutely. I love punk rock. Period.
I do like that Scott Pilgrim is only like he's an adequate bassist.
Yeah, he's not setting the world on fire as a bassist.
Because he like gets into that bass off, and even if you have the subtitles on, it says slow, deliberate bass, and then the other one says fast bass, like complex bass line, and then Scott says slow, simple bass line.
Yeah, Scott is not he's a serviceable bass player.
Absolutely.
Take it from another serviceable bass player.
Yeah, for sure.
But Neil is a much better bass player because he knows all of his parts.
Young Neil,
I love
aka Neil.
Yeah.
Is such a funny character to me. Because like whenever he like finally takes his place in the band, he goes you will no longer be known as young Neil. You will just be known as Neil.
It's like great.
I want to tell you my favorite, like the thing that made me laugh out loud the most.
Please.
And this movie has so many of these moments in it, and we'll get into like the narrative of it in a second, but I don't want to forget this because this was such a throwaway moment. So many of the throwaway jokes are so funny. And so it's when he's fighting the vegan guy.
Oh man.
Right?
Okay.
And after like he drinks the coffee, right? The vegan police show up.
Yes.
And the part that made me laugh out loud is when they were leaving and they like jumped up in the air and high-fived each other and they were like so pumped to have been like able to bust somebody. That shit made me, it was such a like throwaway thing that did not even need to be there, but God, it made me laugh.
And it's great to see Tom. And that's one of those moments in like a sitcom or something, or like some TV action show where they jump up the air and they freeze them in midair, right. And it's like
the 80s freeze frame, but they just did it in slow-mo.
But it's so great to see Thomas Jane play a character like that, because you figure at this point in time we had seen him in The Fog and The Punisher, so he was real like that gruff guy. Basically what John Barenthal is doing now. was kind of what Thomas Jane was doing. So it was kind of cool to see him parody himself and have fun with it. But I also really, really liked, and this was one of my favorite throwaway gags in any film, where they've got the random person off screen commenting on what's happening.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, that guy. I love that. I love that comedy. I love the commentary from the peanut gallery that's not even involved. You know?
Right. I also love that bit. I think that's a very funny bit. I also love, and we didn't get this in this movie because like there was like too much going on. But I've realized recently that I'm a big fan of movies and shows where there is something like a Battle of the Bands or like an election or something, and like a character that we don't even know ends up winning.
Yes,
the whole thing, like that's the best, right? Like
I love that red herring victory.
People square off for like 90 minutes, and then neither of them actually win it. Like I love that.
Absolutely. Like I'm trying to think what's a show that we got recent. Oh, I'm Sharon and I were watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it was the Slayer Fest 99 episode, and Buffy and Cordelia are like doing everything they can to become like the homecoming queen,
right? And
it's like two girls that weren't them at all, and I'm like, I
love that shit. That shit's so funny to me.
I love that subversion.
You've already started getting into it a little bit. The cast of this movie is bonkers.
This is a cast that, number one, this is the most Breakfast Club cast of anything. Like this is not a cast that you see coming together, especially not in this time frame, because in 2000, like this was released in 2010, which means that they were shooting in like 09, like late 08 into 09. We're not too far away from Chris Evans as Captain America.
Not too far. And he's got to look like he's bulking up here. Yeah.
Brandon Routh has already had his turn as the Man of Steel.
Yep.
Brie Larson, she's still a ways away from being Captain Marvel, but she's doing her own thing. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, she's, had her success in the early aughts. Anna Kendrick, she's done her, she's the Twilight Girl.
She's not quite like at the top of her game yet, but she's
this is before Pitch. This is just before Pitch Perfect.
They got most of these folks on the rise,
right? Aubrey Plaza
already as big as he was going to be, right? This was the top of the mountain for Cera.
Yeah, but this was Michael Cera's
like Arrested Development, and
Superbad.
Right, Nick and Nora was in here somewhere.
What's that other one? Year One with him and Jack Black.
Right. Like,
so this was the top of the mountain for him. Yeah. But then you got Ellen Wong before, she started getting big. She's gotten big with Glow.
Got Aubrey Plaza before Parks and Rec, or right about the time Parks and Rec was happening.
Right. Then you got Jason Schwartzman, who is almost unrecognizable.
Indeed, he is like there. And in fact, I would say there were a ton of people in this movie where I was like, I know that person, but who the fuck is that? And they're like young or whatever,
But I mean, even Brandon Routh, you don't really recognize him.
Yeah, he's hard to recognize because his hair's so different.
Right.
It's most of them, right? That's what gets Schwartzman too.
Yep. Oh, and then of course, Kieran Culkin, the younger brother of Macaulay Culkin.
Yes, Macaulay Culkin. Yes, friend of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Allison Pill, who we saw her in Goon, so she's kind of coming in on that as well. This
and also like a little Bill Hader cameo.
From Bill Hader up in this.
Crazy.
And I'll tell you what, man, the fight choreography of this is so good. But sticking with the cast aspect.
Give us finish up the cast and then we need a 10 options.
All right. Yeah, so the rest of this cast, like I said, we got Clifton Collins Jr., who's the other vegan police officer. He's one of those guys where you don't know him, but he's that guy in that thing, and he's always good when you see him.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, this was just an amazing cast that they're either on the rise or it's right before there's any sort of decline.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure, wasn't Michael Cera in This Is the End also?
Yes, I think
All
so.
right. Yeah, because he's in that crew. He's in that crew, that Seth Rogen, James Franco crew.
Yeah, well, because of Superbad.
Mm-hmm. But no, this cast is definitely on point. And shout out to Mae Whitman as well. Oh my God, I love that girl so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too. And she was another one that I was like, I know this person.
Right.
Like she's like borderline, like unrecognizable. But again, Arrested Development, right?
Yep.
She plays Anne, right?
Yes.
Like the very boring, like they call her Egg.
Yes.
But it's so funny to see her in a role like that compared to this, because she's anything but boring.
Right. Well, what I really appreciate with this one too is that every time that Scott tries to say your ex-boyfriend, X says,
Yeah.
and I really love that how she keeps correcting him until he realizes, like, it was just so great.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
Let's get that 10 ops.
So Scott Pilgrim, 1 year removed from having his heart completely and utterly dashed into more pieces than Captain Marvel can punch into the stratosphere, has decided to get back out there on that horse and date a high schooler until he meets the enigmatic and almost unreachable Amazon delivery woman, Ramona Flowers. And then that's when the Seven Evil Exes arrive.
I had forgotten how big of a deal. Like I had forgotten that Knives was a high schooler first. Like,
I did it first too.
But it came back to me because I remember his friends like ribbing him and everything about it. 22 to 17 is sort of on the cusp of like a little weird, right?
That is like, it's so on that line. It's uncomfortable to try. It's uncomfortable if you can find a reason to make it okay.
Right. That's the thing I was going to say. It's like, honestly, it's not right.
It's really not okay.
It's really not okay. And it is, it's a gap that,
it's too big of a gap for this time
both
frame.
of them would move like 1 year closer to each other. Like if she was 18 and he was 21, then it feels very different. And that's strange to say.
Right.
But that is the matter of the thing, right?
But what's funny about when you talk about age gaps like this, it's that once the younger party reaches the age of, say, 22, 23, 25,
then it stops mattering.
It stops mattering.
Yeah.
But
for like developmental stuff, right? Like we're beyond, like we're not developing anymore. We are adults at that point. Like we're not changing anymore. We've sort of figured things out.
We're there.
We're not in a place where or you're not in a place where you're going to be like as easily taken advantage of, or the power dynamic isn't going to be as different or whatever, right? Correct. You're not going to be as easily manipulated is the thing.
Correct. Now, to Scott's credit, he never did anything out of pocket. Like he even said, we might have hugged once. We started to hold hands, but she started to feel embarrassed. They're not even really dating.
They're really not dating.
They're just like, he's just hanging out with her and playing video games. Like if anything, she's more into it than he is.
Right. The thing is like Scott Pilgrim is 22 years old, but he might as well be 17.
He might as well be 15.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least at first, right?
He is
he sees everything through that prism of like, because we have to assume that this movie is through his eyes and he experiences the world through the eyes of a teenager.
Right. He's very, very, like, you even notice like his sister played by, and of course, Anna Kendrick plays his sister.
Yeah.
She's younger than him, but she calls him little brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she is way more grown up than him. I mean, he doesn't even have a job.
Right.
He has to live in an efficiency apartment sharing a bed with his gay friend.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, hey, why don't you at least have a job?
Movie when he's like, I'm going to need my bed tonight. it's for sex.
And probably tomorrow,
Right.
next week.
Or when
probably
he's like,
next
turn the
year.
light off, and he turns the light off, he's like, I have to assume that you just saw a man's junk.
Kieran Culkin is so great in this. And I love that running gag too, where every time there was something new in Scott's life, and he would tell Wallace, he'd be like, don't tell anyone. And he's like, of course not, you know me. And then his sister just automatically knows.
Right.
How'd you find out, Wallace? Oh, that sneaky bitch.
There are a lot of those like really quick cut gags that are really funny. One of them is at the end, like anytime the hat shows up after somebody comments on
Right.
so
Your hair's getting long. Oh, it is.
like it's like as soon as it goes back to him, he's got a hat on, like he didn't even move. Those things are so funny. But yeah, so the age gap is a little weird.
A little problematic. It's a little problematic. And of course, all the guys in the band are giving him a hard time.
Right.
But the band likes her because she geeks out over them.
Exactly. Yes. Now, Ramona, I said at the top, the podcast that dares to ask how old Ramona Flowers is, because
I think in the comics she's 24.
She's 24, so she's a smidge older than Scott, which checks out. That totally makes sense. She carries herself like a slightly older person, right? Like she's a little bit more like worldly.
Yep.
Asked that question because she's been in these 6 significant relationships. Not only that, but like they're not with nobodies. Like she didn't date just like a bunch of schmoes. You know what I mean?
No, she dated some cats, man. She dated one guy who was he was the only non-white jock. She dated Roxy. She dated Todd, who's like a bass player in a successful band. She dated a successful entrepreneur, twins that are in a band, and a great actor.
Yeah.
Well, moderate actor.
An action star.
An
right?
action star. Is that really acting?
I don't know.
I'm pretending that things are blowing up.
Not sometimes, but sometimes it is.
It could be.
Yeah, it could be. But yeah, I mean, but still a successful Hollywood performer.
Yeah. And who just happens to be Chris Evans.
Right. And so I'm like and of course, like she's moved around a lot. And because she's American and she's just moved to Toronto. And the past just continues to follow her. Her like the boss battle here is, I mean, it's a series of boss battles, but the big boss is Gideon. And Gideon is, I love that he's like, I organized the League of Evil Exes. It took 2 hours.
You know what? You did that perfect too, man. Like, honestly, if there were a remake of Scott Pilgrim versus the World,
I could be Gideon.
You could be Gideon. Like, you got that tone with that right there.
I think I could be Gideon because Gideon comes across as like a sarcastic, like snarky type, you know?
Come on, man. I don't want any hard feelings between us.
Right, exactly.
Like, I could see Shane Wilson stealing someone's girlfriend and then just be like, come on, man. There's no reason to have turkey animosity over here.
Let me ask you, this is sort of like the driving question for me about the whole thing. Is it like, does it feel a little white knighty to you, like that he battles all of these people for her, like for the right to be with her, and then he at the end saves her from her ex? Like, isn't that a little too like?
Yeah, that's a bit on the problematic side. It's almost like
the only thing that saves it is that Knives helps him at the end.
Right. If it's not for Knives, Knives and Ramona help him fight for her.
Right. And that bails the movie out, I think, at the very end. And then Ramona also helps whenever he has to fight
Roxy. That was so hot. Like, I just love seeing if like a guy's in a situation, because like me personally, I'll never raise a hand to a woman. So anytime I see a woman beating the crap out of a guy in a movie and a woman shows up and she gets raw and whoops that ass, I'm like, oh, like I melt like butter.
What is it that Todd Ingram, he like knocks one of them out. He like knocks Knives out or somebody. And he's
he
like, what?
he hit her so hard he knocked her damn dye out of her
the
hair.
dye out of her hair. He goes, yeah, I'll hit a woman. I'm a rock star.
Yo, man, Brandon Routh is so great. Like, Brandon Routh, you want to talk about, all right, look, Brendan Fraser got hosed in Hollywood. He absolutely did.
Yeah.
And that is very, very real. But Brandon Routh, you want to talk about someone who got hosed as well in Hollywood of no fault of his own.
Yeah. He was just in a bad movie.
He was in a bad movie. He did great for the movie. He was the only good part of that movie.
Yeah.
As boring as it was. Yes, I'm talking to you, Superman Returns. And every movie that he's in, every movie and show that he's in, he gives these high quality performances.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll hit a girl. I'm a rock star. Like, who else is going to deliver that line?
I'll hit a girl. I'm a rock star. Like, that was another one that made me laugh. Another sort of like toss away line that was just like so on the nose. That shit made me laugh.
And that was such a great precursor. Like, this is Brandon Routh before his career resurgence with in the Arrowverse, which I'm so glad that he got that because he is so funny. He is so funny. And of course, and Brie Larson, oh my God. Brie Larson is so like amazing in this. Like she plays that evil ass ex that still has a hold on the hero. She plays it so well.
Yeah.
And it was funny to see Aubrey Plaza, who was like just being a complete dick to Scott like the whole time, then start fangirling for Brie Larson.
Yeah.
And I love how they always edited her dialogue because she's always cussing Scott out. He's like, "How are you doing?
How are you doing that with your mouth?" So should we just go down the line of the exes and sort of talk about each of the battles?
Yeah,
because
sure.
I think that's probably the way to move forward through it. I mean,
that's kind of the best way to do it.
At its core, like Scott has to fight these 6 evil exes in order to win, quote unquote, win the right to be with Ramona.
Yeah, 6 different battles, 7 total exes.
Right.
Because one battle involves Scott fighting twins.
Right. Yes. So the first of the evil exes. Well, before we get there, before we get to the battles, whenever he discovers the internet.
Hey, how do you get to Amazon.ca? Amazon.ca. That's
telling me I've got mail. Read this message where the exes are like letting him know that they're gonna have to fight.
But they're not even dating yet. He went on one date with her.
Yeah, and it's just like it looks like we're gonna have to fight. And then he's like, "This is so
boring." Oh man. Dude, Michael Cera is so good.
He was the perfect and maybe only choice for Scott Pilgrim.
I don't think there's anyone else that could play that character.
Not that well.
Because he is so unassuming and so like I love that sort of like half smile when like, yeah, we almost hugged once and you know what, it kind of like that smile almost reminds me of like Bill Cosby in the 80s with the pudding pop.
He's so innocent. Not Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is
no.
Michael Cera is so innocent. It's the same thing that like makes him work so well in Arrested Development.
Right.
That like glazed over, just like doesn't quite understand what's happening any of the time.
He doesn't get that it's not okay to be crushing on your cousin like that.
Right.
And what I don't get is, and he's an actual bass player too, which is awesome. How the hell are you 34 years old but still look like you're in middle school?
I mean, that's the gift,
I guess, man.
In a way.
Yeah. George Michael.
Honestly, I believed that he was a real bassist because of the way that he handled the instrument.
He's very good. He is a bass player because you can tell.
We've talked about this in other movies where people would like play. We talked about this in oh man, it was one of the musical ones where they never showed the guy that was playing the guitar close up.
Oh yeah.
They only showed him really far away. And like here, like I believe that Michael Cera is a better bassist than Scott Pilgrim is.
Oh, he
And
absolutely is.
and he
He's
knows
gotta
he just
be.
knows how to like play like adequately. You know what I mean? He's better
Right.
than that in real life, but in the movie he knows how to sort of like dumb it down, you know?
Right. And you and I both as stringed instrument players, we know what to look for
Right.
in people that are playing instruments. There's just certain things that you do as a bass player, or in your case, an acoustic guitar player. There's just certain ways you hold the instrument,
Yeah.
certain things you
Well,
look
and
at the neck.
there are a couple of scenes where he really gives himself over to the instrument, when
Mhm.
they're like playing in the Battle of the Bands and those scenes where he
Right.
looks like he's just really into it.
Right.
And you can fake that to a point, but like he's not really looking at the instrument or anything. And that's a person that knows how to play.
Yeah, if you're like into the moment and you're not watching your fingers or the
Right.
neck, you're just into
Uh-huh.
the moment.
He's like, he does that like bent all the way over at the waist thing at one point, which is
Yeah.
a total bassist move, right?
Oh, it's even in the
In the
poster.
movie art. Yeah, in the poster art.
Yeah, and that's how he's a way better bass player than I am. Because there's times where I seriously I will sit sometimes with my bass in my lap, playing like the blind guy from Roadhouse. So
Yeah.
I can see my decals on my neck better. I'll just be like, but, so
we
the
get our
first
first
X
fight.
with Matt Patel, excuse me, and he and I love it where he's all formal about it, and he goes, "Dude, did you even read the email?" He's like, "Well, I skimmed it," and he got all pissed off.
Yeah, he got like real bitter about it.
He got even angrier. I don't blame him, man. If I took the time to write that email and you just skimmed it, I'm gonna whoop your ass, dude.
Yeah. Played by Satya Baba of New Girl fame.
Yeah, I was about to say that's your buddy. That's your
Yeah.
pal.
Yeah, he's not in a ton of that. He's in like half of a season of it, but
Okay.
he's got a limited run on there. But
He was on Key and Peele once.
he's one of the like his fight is whatever, like
Well, he's the first one.
Into it, right?
Yeah, he's the first one, so he's the first Evil X. He's not gonna be all that, he ain't gonna be all that. He's not all that in a slice of pancakes.
The what's cool about the Evil X's is that much like any video game boss, like they all sort of have their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And like as is the case with most video game bosses, you have to figure out what that weakness is. Either you have to like watch them to see what their patterns of movement are, what their patterns of attack are, or they all have a tell, right? That something is about to happen. And the same happens with most of these folks here.
Yeah. The second fight we get is with Chris Evans's character.
Right.
I'm trying to find
and I think
something or whatever.
And I think right, yeah. So
Lucas Lee.
Yeah, and I think that this one is really interesting because he uses all of his stunt doubles. This is the total boss move, like the duplication, right?
Right. And I love the fact that at the very beginning of the movie, on the title card, we got the pixelated Nintendo version of the Universal Studios song, and then we get the actual Universal Studios song because they're shooting a movie for Universal Studios.
It like walks out slow, like in slow-mo. But like the skateboard and the like 6 stunt doubles, like this was a good fight.
It really was. And I'll tell you what, it was very interesting because they really took the time. And every time Scott tried to do the banter, it was working against him. Yeah. But then he discovered the vanity of Lucas Lee.
Right.
Meanwhile, Kieran Culkin is like, I want to have his adopted baby. How many guys are saying that about Chris Evans, though?
A bunch.
I mean, dude, Lizzo wants to have Chris Evans's baby.
Yeah.
And I mean, hey, man. He's got America's ass, so of course.
Yeah, it's true. But like you said, Scott capitalizes on his
vanity
and his vanity and like challenges him to do this like sick skateboard trick.
Yeah, which like nobody could like I don't even think Tony Hawk could do that.
Right.
Tony Hawk would be dumb enough to try that.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And from there, that's when we get introduced to the band, where you have Natalie Adams and Todd Ingram, right? Like that's Brie Larson and Brandon Routh
Yeah.
in this band, and like Brie Larson is Scott's ex, and then Brandon Routh plays Todd Ingram. This is the next ex that we have to fight, and this is the vegan. This is
Which is hilarious.
and this guy is this one's tough, right?
He's the pretentious vegan that like, especially at this time when veganism was really becoming a thing,
right?
And everyone saw vegans as like these pretentious people.
Punchline, right?
Yeah, they were just a punchline. But yeah, this was the hardest fight so far because
he was being a vegan Dragon Ball shit, like with his like glowing eyes and all of that.
Dude, homeboy did about hit Ultra Instinct for a second. Holy crap! Apparently, the cats are chasing Odette, and Odette's trying to chase the cat.
Good.
Like this is like entertainment right here.
For sure.
So, but no, it was really cool though how Scott once again had to trick him.
Yeah, and he tried a couple of different things. Like this was not an easy fight because the after he was bested physically, he tried to challenge him to a base-off.
Right.
And he got beat again.
Beated him, yep.
And that's when he like tricked him with the vegan stuff, right? We talked about the vegan police earlier.
Yeah, that was actually really, really good. He goes, wait a minute, chicken isn't vegan? It's like,
so when he stripped of his vegan powers and Scott headbutts him.
Oh man.
And he apologizes to Natalie and he's like, I'm sorry. And she goes, you just headbutted my boyfriend out of existence. Headbutted my boyfriend so hard he exploded.
Dude, I'll tell you what. I mean, I guess you probably should apologize at that point, but no apology is going to take that away.
No.
That's just it. It's over.
And then they're like, are we still going to the after party? Like,
dude, the band are such dicks at this point.
Right?
They're just happy to be getting some success. They don't care.
For sure.
They don't care about Scott's problems.
But
this is where Scott is kind of a dick to Ramona. But I mean, I kind of get it. He's being forced to fight all these people just because he wants to date her.
Yeah.
But then he starts to take his frustration out on her. And I mean, this kind of shows how selfish of a dick he can be.
But who, Scott?
Yeah.
Sure. But like, I feel like this is a reasonable reaction.
Yeah.
It also, I feel like a lot of what this is indicative of like how manipulative Gideon is capable of being, because he's got all these people doing his dirty work,
right?
So he can get back with the woman that all of them want to still be with,
right? And it kind of shows that, and I think that he sort of seems to know that it's going to start being sort of tough on Scott.
Yeah,
and he's just
making him run the gauntlet, right? Like,
right, he's making him run the gauntlet.
But we also see Gideon manipulate Sex Bomb into selling out, right? Like,
right.
It's so this is sort of his central trait, is his ability to manipulate people,
right,
just with words,
right? Because he's manipulated all these people, and through his machinations, Scott he's starting to feel the pressure.
Yeah,
he even says, "Is there anyone here that you didn't mess around with?" Right. Like, and then it sort of pushes, it forms that rift between him and Ramona, which allows him to swoop in and take Ramona, take his band, and it's just rugged. But then, of course, we come to the fight with the twins, which was a pretty interesting little battle.
Yeah, this was a straight up music battle.
Right, which was kind of cool. This sort of made me feel like I was playing a game of Guitar Hero.
Right, and it was interesting, the animals that they chose to use to represent like the rock music, and then the more like DJ centric sort of like dance music.
Right. The one thing about this film, it really shows the genius of Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright he's so visually smart and intelligent. Like, and his visions are so amazing. Like, I really, really wish that we could have gotten more of his version of Ant-Man. Like, yeah, he was the director, but didn't he he wrote some of it?
He did. He co-wrote the screenplay for Ant-Man.
Right, but then something happened where we didn't get the full aspect of it or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, his writing and directing credits are like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, which is so good, The World's End.
Those are two great. Those are some great movies. That Cornetto trilogy is so great.
So good. I haven't seen Last Night in Soho or Baby Driver, but I want to see both.
I'd like to see
This
both.
guy is like, it's so crazy how good he is and how you don't really hear his name that often. He's still pretty young too.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think
with those kinds of titles under his belt, you know.
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure he's probably at a point now where he's just sort of like, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Plus, you figure he's more partnered up with Simon Pegg, and Simon Pegg is exploded right now. I mean, he's like a major part of the Mission Impossible series. And he's also, he voiced Phineas Nigellus Black in the Hogwarts Legacy, which is probably growing his star even more so. Yeah. But I would definitely like to see more of Edgar Wright, because Edgar Wright,
because he does have these folks that he tends to use in a lot of his movies, these recurring cast members, and Scott Pilgrim versus the World is the only one that doesn't feature any of them.
Yes, this is his first time stepping out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, he's so good. He's so amazing at this. So we finally get to the battle. And Scott gets his one up before he goes into the fight and just gets absolutely wrecked.
Yeah, he does okay. He declares his love for Ramona. He gets the power of love.
I'm in lesbian with you.
He goes, I love the voiceover. Scott unlocks the power of love.
I do love that. That's another throwaway gag that I like. I really, really like that stuff. I like that.
Like after he uses his one up and then he comes back and he's like, I'm going to beat your ass. It's like, Scott unlocks the power of self-confidence.
It's so great. But I really like how he did everything right. He realized where he was the villain of the story. And he really did his best to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And Sex Bomb was like, first it was like, we're Sex Bomb and we're doing this so we can make more money. 1, 2, 3. And it was like, we're Sex Bomb. We're going to watch Scott Pilgrim kick your ass. Oh, man, that was so cool. And of course, Knives showing up to do battle with Ramona. Oh, yeah. Man. And I'm glad that he sort of stood up and manned up on that one as well.
Yeah, and that he was able to take ownership of the fact that he had cheated on the two of them with
one another,
right?
Yeah.
That he didn't, initially he had tried to sort of snake his way out of it or whatever, and then he took ownership of that, and then he defeats Gideon, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention Nega Scott.
And this is looking like it's going to be like the battle to end all battles.
That's the best. Is like, you can defeat me, but can you defeat yourself?
And I really love how Ramona and Knives are like,
they're ready to go.
He was like, no, I have to do this alone. And then it was like, oh yeah, so this is going to be really, really great. Why don't we get together next week? They have these great French toasts.
They're like, what happened? And he goes, oh, we just shot the shit. He's a really nice guy.
But if you fought the evil Shane Wilson, would you guys come to that understanding like that? Or
I feel like I would have to fight the good one.
Oh, that makes sense. That checks out.
Yeah.
That checks out.
That checks out.
I don't know. I think that I'm like literally stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, because I have evil tendencies and I have good tendencies. I think middle of the road, Brian would have to fight
both of the others.
Yes. It would end up being like a triple threat match at WrestleMania.
There you go. I like that. Obviously, the film ends. Ramona. Now, listen. Here's the thing. If I had just done all of this shit and Ramona tried to walk away from me, I'd fight her. Like,
yeah. After everything that I have been through, you ain't leaving.
But at the same time, I feel like he should let her walk, because this is the second time in this movie that she's tried to walk away.
Oh, absolutely. If you're seriously all about that running away game, fucking run.
And that's all she does, right? Like she's only in Canada because she's running from her past. So like this idea that they're going to try again and that it's all going to work out, like she's still who she is. Like she's still a runner and he's still a child.
Yes. Nothing has changed. It's just that
they've just made it through. Like he's learned a little bit about like taking ownership of his mistakes. Honestly, Knives goes through the most growth of any of them.
Absolutely, because she even looks at him. She goes, "Go ahead after her."
Yeah,
I'm way too cool for you.
He completely accepts that their relationship is over and that she doesn't need him and that she's better off without him.
She really is. Like, and I think that she likes Scott because he's just this dorky little sweet guy. Like, you just want to. It's kind of like the way they described Mickey Gordon last week. You know, you just want to pick him up and hug him.
Yeah,
but it's like he's nowhere near in my league.
Right.
Like he is so out of her league.
To anyone that wants to quibble with me over my take on Mickey last week being able to bang those cheerleaders and Scott Pilgrim this week being able to bang Ramona Flowers, is that Ramona Flowers is a different kind of character.
Right.
And Scott Pilgrim is also a different kind of character. Right.
Right.
But it also should be noted that this entire movie takes place in Scott Pilgrim's fantasy land. And I'm not 100% sure that any of it actually happened.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. And it takes place in Canada.
Right. And we all know that that is a made up place.
Yeah, there's no such place as Canada.
There's no such place as Canada.
Yeah, I mean,
you're going to tell me that somebody made a country and they named their dollar coin loonies and their police mounties? Get out of here. This is not a real place.
Yeah. What's next? Asgard?
Right. And your friends over on the Letterkenny podcast, they live in like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Or maybe they live in like the top triangle of Minnesota. But those are the only two places that is what people mean when they say Canada.
Yeah, it's just like Northern America.
Right. It's Washington State, North Dakota, the top part of Minnesota, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Maine. That's Canada.
Yeah, and there's like a piece of France that touches America. That's it.
Yes. France and Russia are like Chinese finger trapping America.
That's where all the damn hot air balloons are coming
right from. Yeah, exactly. Yes, they're blowing up the condoms that they should be using, but they're raw dogging us from both ends.
Oh, look at it go.
And also Alaska is also Canada, or I should say Russia. Canada is Alaska.
Yeah, there you go.
How is Alaska so big if it's not also like that's Canada? Congratulations, Al, you're American. How's Alaska?
Oh my god. Indeed.
Yeah, trade in those loonies for silver dollars like a real patriot.
Oh god.
My loonies have Susan B. Anthony on them.
Oh no, Susan B. Anthony.
All right. Well, with that being said,
my
heart. Here's a Smiley, I guess.
Yeah, sure. What's he?
The Plotaholics rating system for the movies is a pretty simple system. Basically, they rate movies based on how many shots it takes to get through them. So if you got a good movie and you get through it all the way sober, then it takes 0 shots to get through the movie. And then if you got a really bad movie, then it could take up to 5 shots to get through the whole thing. I think you can try to figure out the middle part yourself. So, what can I get you?
Oh my god. I tell you what, if I can get a Shane Wilson rant like this, I would do this movie every single solitary week. Shane Wilson rants are the best rants ever.
This is similar to our like the werewolf, like big werewolf trying to like wolf rant.
Yes, that is definitely up there. Oh my god, that was like the greatest rant ever.
That's what gave us the like the info, the Alex Jones impression, right?
Yes.
Werewolves are, and it was that one went on for like several weeks, I think.
Yes, it did, man. That was a long running gag right there. That was a
Yeah.
nice long running gag right there.
Yeah, about as long as the gag that would suggest that Canada's a real country. How many A's do you need in your name, bro? Pick a different vowel. Anyway, it's a 0 shot for me. Not Canada, but this movie.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, this is easily a 0 shot rating for me.
The pacing is so good. It's 1:40 and it never feels like it. And there's a ton of stuff that happens. It's just go the whole time. I love the visual choices of like the different graphics and the comic book type stuff that they put in there. I love that stuff so much. It's super weird and I love weird and it's super funny. And
the comic sound, the video game sounds add in with the comic book visuals. The casting choices were absolutely perfect. The dialogue is witty and snappy. It never feels, even to this day, you know, we're 13 years later and this film is still as snappy and relevant as it ever was.
It still looks great. It holds up visually.
Absolutely.
It's such a cool world that they've created here in Toronto.
The mythical land of Toronto.
The mythical land, the fantasy land of Toronto, where like Hollywood actors mingle with second-rate rock bands.
Toronto.
So, you know,
yeah.
I'm for it. 0 shots for me.
Absolute 0 shots. This is probably Edgar Wright's greatest film. As fun as Shaun of the Dead and the Cornetto series are, as great as Ant-Man is, I'm sorry, this is the best. This is his best film, and there's no way he's topping this, like, at all.
My second favorite.
Hot Fuzz is definitely a second favorite. That is, I'm sorry, every time Nick Frost just does the, I laugh my ass off.
Like the last 30 minutes of Hot Fuzz is bonkers.
It really is. It's 2 different movies all at the same time.
Yeah.
And anytime I could see Timothy Dalton doing something funny, I'm in. Yeah. I'm absolutely in. So what are we gonna do next week?
I was gonna ask you, would you like to do Hot Fuzz?
Yes, let's do Hot Fuzz next week.
I was either gonna suggest Hot Fuzz or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I'm all about that Hot Fuzz life. Let's do a little bit more Edgar Wright.
Well, then let's get Hot Fuzz next week, and yeah, maybe we'll wrap February with like just some Edgar Wright love and do Hot Fuzz. And I haven't seen Baby Driver, and I've heard very good things.
Let's do Baby Driver then. Let's finish out. Let's finish out with an Edgar Wright tic-tac-toe.
All right, let's do it. All right, well then we will see you guys next week for Hot Fuzz.
Oh, and I will say this too, because I had someone ask me how come we weren't doing any black cinema for February. I understand that February is Black History Month, but I kind of feel a kind of way about that because it's the shortest month and one of the coldest months of the year. Mm-hmm. So I would be up for celebrating Juneteenth by doing some black cinema.
Yeah, I'm down for that always. And of course we have our annual tradition.
Yes.
Coming up here in just it's just a couple of weeks. Well, what is like probably 6 weeks off at this point, but the John Singleton
yes
that we do every year.
Yeah, every year.
At the beginning of April or some point.
Yes, that's an early April thing because that's about when he passed.
Yeah. But yeah, we've debated like Black History Month blocks in the past, and I think what we end up doing is we end up just scattering it throughout.
Yeah.
And touching on it whenever we do like genre blocks, we tend to include some black cinema in the genre block.
Yes.
And
we do that early May because he passed away in April.
I got you.
So that's
the first week of May.
Yes, it's the first week of May we do a John Singleton film.
Yeah. So So we'll be back next week with the least black movie on the planet, Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz, yes. The most British, among the most British films on the planet, but the least black film.
Yes. Well, and one thing you can say about Britain is that at least it exists.
Yes.
So
it's really there.
Yeah, it's really there. So we will talk to you guys next week. Please rate, review, subscribe. Have you ever seen Canada? Tell us about it. What did it look like?
Yeah. I mean, next thing you know, you're going to try to sell me this bill of goods that Canada's a real place. Like there's actually a real guy named John Cena. I've never seen him.
Oh, I've seen John Cena.
You have?
Yes.
I don't believe you.
I've seen him. him.
Okay. You seen Cena?
I've seen
Cena.
I've seen him a bunch of times, actually. I think that people are lying. I think there's one communal lie that everyone decided to agree to lie about never having seen this giant man.
Well, I mean, hey, we're already at a point now where there's already this huge conspiracy that there's some mythological country up north. There's a mythological man from Massachusetts.
Yes, Mark Wahlberg. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week.
See you guys next week. Take care.
Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo. Oh my God! If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.